Welcome to the session on statoacoustic organs. The statoacoustic organ are the organs concerned with maintaining equilibrium and hearing. They are nothing but a pair of ears. The ear of frog has two portions, that is the middle ear and the inner ear. External ear is absent. The middle ear is referred as the tympanic cavity, and the cavity of the middle ear is known as the tympanic cavity, while the internal ear is otherwise referred as the auditory capsule. The space inside the middle ear is known as tympanic cavity, while the outer part, the external part of the tympanic cavity is closed by a membrane known as tympanic membrane or tympanum. Okay, so the middle ear is externally closed by tympanic membrane, which stretches over a cartilaginous ring. Internally, you can see there is a cartilaginous ring which is known as annulus tympanicus. And this tympanum or tympanic membrane, it stretches over the annulus tympanicus and it closes the tympanic cavity. Okay. Middle ear has a spacious air-filled cavity. It is the tympanic cavity, as already mentioned. This communicates with the pharynx through a pair of eustachian tubes, just like what you have studied in the case of humans. The middle ear, the tympanic cavity, it communicates with the pharynx by way of eustachian tubes. The tympanic cavity, you can see it is bridged by a slender bone. Okay, from the tympanic membrane to the internal ear, across the tympanic cavity, you can see a slender bone, and that is known as the columella oris, or it is otherwise referred as the plectrum. Okay, here you can see this is the tympanic membrane. Okay, so the tympanic membrane. So here this is actually the tympanic cavity. It is the middle ear. Okay, extending from the tympanic membrane is a bone which actually extends across the tympanic cavity, and this is the columella oris, or it is otherwise referred as plectrum. And these bone is responsible for transmitting vibrations from the tympanic membrane or tympanum to the internal ear. The inner end of the columella, you can see this part, it is attached to a cartilaginous plate. It is known as a stapedial plate. So this is bone, columella oris, or the plectrum, and the external end is actually connected to the tympanic membrane, while the internal part of the columella, it is connected to a cartilaginous plate. It is known as a stapedial plate. Fine. Now, the tympanic membrane communicates with the tympanic cavity. It communicates with the internal ear by an opening known as fenestra ovalis. The stapedial plate over here, it actually plugs itself into the fenestra ovalis. So fenestra ovalis is actually an opening in the inner ear. Okay, and this stapedial plate, it plugs this opening. It closes this opening. So that is how it is connected. So whatever vibrations or whatever vibrates the tympanic membrane, whatever sound waves falls on the tympanic membrane, it makes the tympanum vibrate, and these vibrations are picked up by the columella oris. It is passed through the stapedial plate into the inner ear. That is how the transmission takes place. Okay. Now the fenestra ovalis is bordered by a bony ring called operculum, and it is covered by a membrane. So fenestra ovalis, just like we have seen that annulus tympanicus is a cartilaginous ring over which stretches the tympanum. Here you can see in the inner ear there is another what you call a bony ring. It is known as operculum, and the membrane on the fenestra ovalis stretches over this operculum. So operculum, actually it is a membrane, and it is upon that the stapedial plate communicates with. Okay, so you can see that the operculum and the plectrum fuse together. It forms operculum plectrum complex. Okay, or columella oris operculum complex. So this is actually a characteristic feature of most of the amphibians. I hope it is clear. Okay. Yeah. So now the next part. So we have seen that in the middle ear we have annulus tympanicus. It is a cartilaginous ring-like structure, and upon that stretches the tympanic membrane. On the tympanic membrane, on the internal part, you can see there is a bony rod-like bone part which is attached to, that is the columella oris, and the internal part of the columella oris is connected to a cartilaginous plate. It is a stapedial plate. The stapedial plate communicates with the membranous covering over the fenestra ovalis of the inner ear. Fenestra ovalis is nothing but an opening in the inner ear, and this opening, the fenestra ovalis, is covered by way of a membrane which stretches over a bony ring on the fenestra ovalis, and this bony ring is known as the operculum. Okay, now the columella oris, it fuses with the what you call the operculum, and it forms a complex known as operculum plectrum complex, and this is actually a characteristic feature of most of the amphibians. Now, with respect to inner ear, the inner ear, it is actually otherwise known as auditory capsule, and it is formed of the pro-aortic and exo-occipital bones. Okay, this the internal ear. It is the internal ear. It is actually the membranous labyrinth, because all the parts are actually formed of membrane. Okay, this, it is placed inside a part of the skull which is known as the bony labyrinth. It is a part of the skull, the bony labyrinth. Okay, and this bony labyrinth, it is filled with a fluid which is known as the perilymph, and the membranous labyrinth over here, what you can see in the figure, it is suspended in this perilymph. The lumen inside the internal ear is also filled with another fluid which is known as the endolymph. Okay, so you can see that inner ear is actually formed of membranous structures, and this hence it is known as membranous labyrinth. The membranous labyrinth, it is placed inside, or it is located inside, lodged inside a skull part which is known as the bony labyrinth. Okay, it is just like the shape is almost like this. Okay, here. So this internal ear, or the what you call membranous labyrinth, perfectly fits into the bony labyrinth. It is a part of the skull. It is formed of the pro-aortic and the exo-occipital bones. Okay. Now, as said, the bony labyrinth, it is filled with perilymph. You can see the membranous labyrinth lodged in that, and the lumen inside the membranous labyrinth, it is filled with endolymph. Okay. Now, the membranous labyrinth, it is what are the structures which forms the membrane, the inner ear. Okay, the inner ear is formed of two parts. One is this one, the vestibular region. Okay, which is formed of utriculus and sacculus. Another is three semicircular canals. Okay, you can see one is horizontal over here. This is a horizontal semicircular canal. Two are vertical. Depending upon its position, you can have anterior vertical semicircular canal and posterior vertical semicircular canal. So three semicircular canals plus a vestibule forms the internal ear, and the vestibule, it can be differentiated into utriculus and sacculus. Okay, now this actually the balancing as well as hearing is made possible by the various parts of the internal ear. Okay, now each of the semicircular canal, you can see one end of it is swollen and it forms the ampulla. So this is the anterior vertical semicircular canal, and this is the ampulla of that. And here you can see this is the ampulla of the horizontal canal, and this is actually the ampulla of the posterior vertical semicircular canal. Okay, and this is the ampulla. Now, a vestibule, as already mentioned, it is divided into two, utriculus and sacculus, and you can see this part is a sacculus. The sacculus, it bear two what you call projections or dilations, and these dilations are referred as you can see pars basilaris and pars lagina. These are the two what you call dilations on the sacculus. The semicircular canals, the utriculus and the sacculus, brings about the balancing function or maintaining equilibrium, while the lagina, the pars lagina, is responsible for the hearing. Okay, so the wall of the membranous labyrinth, they have six receptor spots, okay, or sensory patches. So receptor spots, and these receptor spots are located on one in the utriculus, one in the sacculus, then one in the pars legina, and one each on each of the what do you call ampulla. Okay, so how many? One, two, here three, then one in pars legina, the fourth one, the fifth one in sacculus, and sixth one in utriculus. So six receptor spots can be found on the wall of the membranous what do you call labyrinth. These sensory patches, they have different structural features, and hence have been given different names. Sensory spots on the ampulla, it is known as the sensory spots, yeah, on the ampulla they are known as cristae, and sensory spots on the other three parts they are known as maculae. Okay. The macula of utriculus, it is very conspicuous, and here you can see it is known as a pars neglecta. Okay, this is actually the sensory spot of utriculus. So this is where the sensory spot is placed in the utriculus, and that is referred as pars neglecta. Okay, so each receptor spot, it consists of a group of sensory hair cells. These are the sensory hair cells, and it bears sensory hairs on its free end, and this it is provided with sensory hairs, you can see, and the sensory hair cells are supported by supporting cells on the side, and you can see each of the, this is actually crista. Okay, so this is the semicircular canal. Here it will be continuing a semicircular canal, and this is the ampulla of the semicircular canal, and here we can see the receptor spot is what is referred as a crista. Okay, so this is the ampulla. Now each crista, it contains a gelatinous material, it is known as cupula, and similar gelatinous material is found in macula, which is known as otolith membrane. Now this membrane is in close contact with the sensory hairs, and this contains, you can see small like dark spots, isn't it? That represents otolith. Okay, these are calcareous crystalline bodies. It is otherwise known as otoconia, and the cristae and maculae are innervated by like branches from the auditory nerve. These are the nerves from the branches from the auditory nerve. Okay. Now, how the hearing is made possible? During when sound waves strike on the tympanic membrane vibrate, and this vibration is picked up by the columella, and then from there to the stapedial plate, and then from there to the perilymph and the endolymph of the internal ear. Okay, and these vibrations, it is actually the endolymph. This is what is endolymph inside the what do you call the ampulla, isn't it? So the endolymph, it picks up the vibration, and this vibration is then perceived by the sensory hairs. Okay, and it is passed on to the sensory hair cells, and from there what happens is, once the sensory hair cells gets excited due to the vibrations, the what do you call that, branches or the nerve endings of the auditory nerve picks up this message, and it gets converted into impulses. The impulses are then transmitted through these nerve endings to the auditory nerve, and from there to the central nervous system, the auditory center of the brain. Okay, so this is how the the mechanism of hearing is made possible. I hope it is clear. Okay, so this is all about the structure of ear. Okay, fine. Thank you.